Trump just got in office, launched a meme coin, and it went to like a $70 billion market cap.
The downside to blockchain is it's the opposite of Trump. It's the opposite of a mob boss. I think title insurance is a scam.
I think overall people are excited.
I'm really interested in how this affects the deficit.
They just updated the US debt clock to include Doge.
I don't think there's a person in the country that is disappointed with that. Jeff Bezos tried it, couldn't do it. Elon Musk tried it and did it.
All right, let's talk about tariffs.
It won't raise prices by 25%. What tariffs do is they actually increase the value of the dollar compared to that country's currency. It's deflationary. There is a national security concern. China doesn't own TikTok.
Tom Wheelwright, I don't think you need an introduction, man. Welcome back to the show. It's been crazy. Trump just got in office, launched a meme coin. Unbelievable. Then his wife launches a meme coin. Yep. And then we got him being a mob boss, throwing around tariffs. Want to talk about that. And obviously want, like, from a tax perspective, want to get your initial thoughts. He won and the people spoke. I think overall people are excited, but it is wild times. I think the media just got revived because I think they had, they're just going to have 4 years of content now. And so with that, how's that for an intro? Welcome back to the BetterWealth show.
No, I love it, Caleb. Always good to be with you. And, never a dull moment with our friend Donald Trump.
Let's dive in, like, big picture wise. If you had to zoom out, in your perspective, Trump's in office. What are some of your thought processes? Anything changed since we've last chatted? Why don't you start there, and then I want to talk about tariffs because it's something super fascinating, and there's people on both sides on the aisle, and I would just love to get your perspective around that.
Well, I do have thoughts about tariffs. I actually had a long conversation with my wife at breakfast the other day about tariffs because my perspective is a little, I think, more balanced than most people's on tariffs. They're effectively a tax, but who are they a tax on is the question. I think overall, you mentioned it. The thing Trump brings is energy, and we haven't had that kind of energy in a very long time. And I actually think his 4 years away served him. I think he'll be a better president now than he would have been had he been reelected in 2020. I actually think that 4 years of Biden was a bit of a wake-up call for a lot of people. I know my wife's not happy about how the election turned out, but 49% of the people are not happy, right? 51% are happy. They say, well, it was a landslide. No, it wasn't really. Reagan's second term, that was a landslide, right? But we haven't had a landslide since then. So I think it's, interesting is I'm really interested in how this affects the deficit because Trump increased the deficit substantially during his term. So will the deficit hawks, one of my questions is, will the deficit hawks in Congress, because they've got so much clout, because there's such a small majority of Republicans in Congress, that perhaps they will actually do something, right? Which is kind of my take on it. From a tax policy standpoint, Trump is 100% right that we need to encourage manufacturing in the U.S. I mean, I don't know anybody in the tax industry that would disagree with that. So I think right there, probably the most important part of his tax policy is the tax policy surrounding manufacturing in the U.S.
Did you know that they just updated the U.S. debt clock to include Doge? Have you seen this?
No.
Here, let me share my screen. Thanks to Twitter, I saw this today. So U.S. debt clock can be super depressing. You have the 36 trillion and counting, but you have this little Doge clock right here on all the money that's being saved. And to date, they're saying that there's over $8 billion so far that they saved through Department.
What, since Monday?
Government efficiency.
Like a couple of days ago?
This is saying the Department of Government Efficiency Advisory Commission, the real-time saving objective from reducing government waste, fraud, and abuse in federal government agencies. So don't shoot the messenger. I'm just saying this is what's here.
Wow.
And I think what Elon or whoever's idea with this is very Elon-ish, is like to publicly show the money that we're saving. And so my question just to you is, you're right. The first year that Trump, or the first 4 years that Trump was in, it wasn't like they slashed the debt. I feel like it's been more of a conversation, and there are people speaking into his ears, including Elon, that are obsessed with this. But then you also have so much of the media saying like Elon's days are numbered in DC. Elon and Trump are not going to get along. Like you almost see from day one, like the media is trying to set them up to
Of
like have a
course,
falling out.
of course they are.
So what are your
They
thoughts
like
on
conflict. The media likes conflict.
what is your thoughts on the Department of Government and Efficiency? How do you see it playing out? Do you think that it's already been sued? And so like, do you even think it's will get
I
off the
will tell
ground?
you that I don't, outside of people who are being affected by it directly, I don't think there's a person in the country that is disappointed with that. I think I think of all of Trump's proposed policies, that's the most, that's the most popular of
Yeah.
all of his potential policies. Everybody knows that the government's bloated. Everybody knows that there's a ton of waste in government. Everybody knows that we spend money where we shouldn't. I mean, everybody knows that, and it's not just the government, by the way. I don't want to throw government workers under the bus here. A lot of people that work from home are not working full time. Okay. There are people, I mean, there's literally, you can buy a mouse clicker that you can walk away and then it's clicking so that it appears like you're at work. You can buy one. Like, are you kidding me? So, it's like, or you go to the beach. So we're at the beach and it's 1 o'clock in the afternoon on a Wednesday, and and the beach is crowded with surfers. And I turned to my wife and I said, I think these people are all working from home. She says, I think so. So, working from home is, they say, is just as efficient as working in the office. I don't believe it for a second. You've got to have the right people. You've got to have the right situation. And so I think Doge is such a good idea. And who else to be in charge of it than Elon Musk, who slashed costs at Twitter, now X, and and came up with the idea that we're going to reuse our rockets. I mean, Jeff Bezos tried it, couldn't do it, right?
Yeah, that's
Elon
right.
Musk tried it and did it, right?
Yeah.
Does it every time. So I think it's great. I think it's awesome.
Yeah, and I think I saw Vivek speak on a podcast, and he just said like, "Hey, we're just going to force people to show up, and that by default is going to get people to quit."
Of course.
And then there was something that went viral on Twitter a while back. On like an famous investor would go out and ask people where they worked at when they were suntanning, and then he would short that company's stock. And he's like, that was his whole like, how many? It's like if you keep on finding people that aren't working and suntanning, you're gonna short their stock. It's an interesting thought process. All right, let's talk about tariffs. How will the 25% tariff on Canadian and Mexican imports impact U.S. consumers and businesses?
Well, let's start with what it won't do. It won't raise prices by 25%. Okay. Tariffs don't work that way. And here's why. Because a tariff is protectionist, right? And typically what happens, and there's lots of studies that show that I'm not making this up. What tariffs do is they actually increase the value of the dollar compared to that country's currency. So remember, we hear a lot about, is the dollar going down, or, what's going on with the dollar? The value of the dollar is completely relative to the value of other currencies and of our trading partners. That's how you really look at the value of the dollar. And so, give me an example. So a year ago, my wife and I go to Europe. We went to the French Open. We went to the beach in Portugal. Went to Venice. We love Europe. And what was really noticeable is just how cheap everything was. Well, it's not that it was cheap. It's that the dollar was so strong compared to the euro. right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if the dollar, historically the dollar it was only worth 80. It took $1.20 to buy a euro. Now it's almost parity, right? So a dollar buys a euro. Well, what that means is that as the dollar is stronger, then goods that we're buying from that foreign country are cheaper because we have more purchasing power. It's not cheaper to the people in that country. It's cheaper to Americans. So
Mm-hmm.
what typically happens with tariffs is they actually make the dollar stronger vis-a-vis the other currency. So that means that compared to the peso or the Canadian dollar, the US dollar will be stronger. Well, that will reduce prices, not increase prices. Now, there's going to be some price increase. Don't get me wrong. The other side of this is that other studies have shown that the sellers, the people who are exporting to the US that we're importing from, they will try to reduce their prices somewhat because they don't want to lose market share. So
Mm-hmm.
we'll put price pressure on them because what they don't want is they don't want to, if they're getting a 25% nominal price increase because of a tariff, they don't want us to go somewhere else, right?
Yep.
Which it doesn't have that 25% increase. And so there is pressure. Now, I do think Caleb, it has to be targeted. I think it has to be well thought out. I don't like across the board tariffs. Those don't make a lot of sense to me, but targeted tariffs will not produce the price increase that the media says they'll produce. So you will not get a 25% price increase with a 25% tariff. You'll get something less than that. You will probably get a price increase, but not that much.
Yep. So you're saying that if everyone had the same currency and everything is like the same, obviously creating more friction is going to be passed on. But what we're saying is we're looking at different economies and people want I mean, the one thing that Trump ran on is like, we have a country that just we're getting ripped off from everybody. He even said like, I'm not even gonna tell you the countries that aren't ripping us off because I don't want them to like give them a competitive advantage. So he's pretty much saying like, we're just getting crushed. And so there's room that implies like there's room for potentially these companies to go lower because they don't want to lose the U.S.
Well,
so that's number one. And then your number two is we have the U.S. dollar.
Right. We're the strongest economy in the world. Okay. We're not as big as China. We're not as big as India, but we're the strongest economy. And so if you saw what's happened over the last few years, people are going, well, geez, the US was struggling. Well, but not compared to Europe, not compared to some other countries, right? And China is really struggling right now. And so it's not a zero-sum game. We're actually looking at how do we match up against everybody else. Well, if you're the 800-pound gorilla, right, and you're the big economy, why are you just giving that away for free? I mean, that's Trump's point, right? Why are you just giving that away for free? Why aren't you expecting something back from your trading partners? And I mean, in his first term, right, he improved the trade agreement with Canada and Mexico, and he wants to do it again. He wants to tighten it even further. And so the other thing to remember, Caleb, is that what we buy from Mexico, we also buy from other places. So some of it we produce here, some of it we might buy from South America. Some of it buy from South, because, a lot of it is fruits and vegetables, right? So we buy a lot of fruits and vegetables from Mexico, like avocado, as an example, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, well, could we buy those from Ecuador? Maybe, right? And so it's not just like, they're not a sole source. If they were a sole source, that would be a problem for us, right? But if they're not a sole source, and you take China is not a sole source in, well, there are a few things that are almost a sole source. We got to be careful on that side.
Yeah.
But where they're not a sole source, like just manufacturing, generic manufacturing, so what? I mean, and the other side is, would it be that bad if we increased prices on cheap Chinese goods that end up in the trash? I don't think so.
Now, explain to me in your own words, external revenue. What was it? They're launching like
Oh,
an external.
that's the idea of the external revenue service. Well, here's the thing. If you have enough tariffs and they get complex enough, you've got to have somebody in the US government that is tracking, administering, making sure that people are actually paying the right amount of tariff. I mean, think about how complex our world is, Caleb. I mean, you know, you have things that you go, well, this is made in the US. It says it's made in the US, and yet it gets components from Asia, Africa,
it's
South
a compliance
America.
to make sure. It's a compliance to make sure that people are we're getting paid.
Right. The idea of a internal revenue service or an external revenue service is just to ensure compliance. That's all.
Okay. And so what is your thoughts? I want you to play devil's advocate if you can. Is there a downfall of Trump being like a mob boss? Like he straight up is trolling Trudeau. Maybe it was one of the reasons to get him to step down and pretty much being like, hey, like you're going to do this. We're going to impose tariffs. And in a way, it seems like he's gotten his way up into this point. Is that because of that energy that he's bringing? Because it also, and again, I don't want to make this super political, but he's getting into office and the hostages get released. And we'll see what happens with Russia and Ukraine. But it seems like it's like, what is it because he will actually force something? Is he dealing with tariffs, or is it just like, because you would think those countries would want Biden in and they would be like, almost making it more politically friction.
Weak leaders are always more dangerous than strong leaders, always. And you know, weak leadership is just weak. And so, you know, you think about, we all remember, and for some of us, it was us, we all remember the kid that got picked on all the time.
Yeah.
Right. They were weak, and the weak get picked on. We're a very strong, powerful country. We should not be picked on. We should not have our lunch handed to us, basically, you know?
Yeah.
We shouldn't be, we should, I'm not saying we should pick on other people at all.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, and for example, in Trump's first term, he talked about, he got Europe to increase their defense budget because we were paying all of their defense budget. Why are we doing that? Yes.
Yeah.
I'm a big believer that we need to, you know, I personally like NATO. I think it's good that we have allies. I mean, you don't want to be on your own, right?
Yeah.
We have the advantage that we are not real. It's not like we've got invaders on the north or the south of us, right? Or the east or the west. Yeah. That said, Russia's proved that they've got weapons that can reach anywhere in the US. So does China. So it's not like it used to be where we can just be, you can't be an isolationist anymore. You've got to be involved with the other countries. But at the same time, do we want to make sure that we are treated fairly? Yeah, I think we do.
Is there any tax benefit of changing the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America? Or is that straight up like a branding deal? And then my next question is Panama Canal and some of that stuff.
You know, those are, I think those are more defense questions. I think the Panama Canal is a defense question. I think Greenland is a defense question.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Greenland. It's all, you think it's rooted in.
Those are strategic. What you don't want, so Panama Canal is where all the trade goes through, right? All goes through the Panama Canal. Do you want the U.S. to be held hostage over that? Yeah. Do you want, Greenland is very strategic. I actually think Greenland's going to be successful for Trump. I'm not saying he's going to buy it. What I am saying though, is that Greenland's, which is Greenland/Denmark, because Denmark controls Greenland, right? They're already talking about, hey, come on, let's have discussions. They don't want an invasion. They want to be friendly to the U.S. And I think that's great. And it's, you know, sometimes it takes a projection of strength to do that. I think the people that are afraid of Trump are afraid he will be a mob boss. And so we do have, what makes America unique to the world is our checks and balances. And what you don't want is, you don't want a president. You know, the founding fathers did not want the president to have too much power. they were
Yeah.
actually wanted the president to have very little power because they had just had a king. They did not want another king, right? They had King George. They didn't want King George back. And they were worried that a president would be King George. And so you do have to, what I'm comfortable that we have checks and balances. A lot of people are less comfortable, which is why people call Trump a fascist or something like that. It's just that, we don't actually have a democracy per se. However, we do have more of a republic. And what we do want is we want to make sure those three, the three arms of government, the administration, which is the presidency, the judiciary, which is the courts, and Congress, are checks and balances on each other. And I think that as long as they do, and I actually think the narrow margin in the House is going to be has already been a check on Trump because he wanted the debt ceiling raised and they said no. Already. So I don't think he's going to, America is not like some other countries. You do. I mean, look at Biden. Biden wanted to forgive all student loan debt. Couldn't do it because the court said, no, you can't do that. And so, he acted like a mob boss in some ways, right? I mean, that was absolutely, he knew it was illegal. He knew what he was doing was illegal and said, well, in the meantime, we'll forgive enough debt that it'll be worth it. I'm going, are you kidding? You are purposely doing something that's illegal as the president of the United States. I mean, I thought that was disgusting, frankly. Okay. I'm not shy about that one. So you do want to make sure, for example, I'll give you, Trump's already done something that I'm going, not going to hold up, which is birthright citizenship, right? He's issued an executive order, no birthright citizenship. An executive order can't eliminate birthright citizenship. It's in the Constitution. So you can't change the Constitution without going through the proper channels, right? So anyway, it'll be interesting to watch. He understands Washington a lot better than he did 4 years ago. So if I were in Washington, I would be scared if I were in Washington.
Yeah, especially if you're like an employee for the government, you're not really pulling your weight. You might be
or even if you are pulling your weight, you're going to be scared.
Yeah, I think you could run on a platform to say, hey, we're going to abolish the DMV, or we're going to make this thing. I think you could probably get all 50 states to get behind that. That might be like an ace that we have to use in the future.
I think you could run on a platform of abolishing of unwinding the 16th Amendment. I think people would be thrilled. No income tax.
Yeah. So let's talk about that. So tariffs, are tariffs going to, like, Trump would go down as one of the greatest presidents of all time if he could eliminate income tax. Is that going to happen? Do tariffs have the ability to at least substitute some of the taxes?
Even if you did everything you could do in Doge and you impose tariffs, you'd still probably, just because of our entitlements, you'd still need an income tax. Now, on the other hand, could you eliminate the 16th Amendment and bring in a value-added tax? Yes, you could.
Okay, let's talk about that.
That would work.
A value-added tax. Is that a value-added tax not the same as consumption tax?
A value-added tax is a type of consumption tax.
Okay, why don't you explain that in your own words?
Consumption tax is a broad term. Okay, so a sales tax is a consumption tax, as an example, right? A value-added tax is most similar to a sales tax. One of the reasons that I'm not as opposed to tariffs as a lot of finance professionals is because other countries all have a value-added tax. And, if you talk to some economists, they'll say, well, but it's not the same because a value-added tax applies equally to citizens of the country or residents of the country as it does to people in other countries. Okay, I get that. However, when you're such a big importer as the U.S., we have a trade deficit, which means that we import more than we export, right? Yeah. Well, okay, so we that means that all of those imports are subject to a value-added tax, right? I'm sorry. All of those, they are not. So the imports, what we're importing is not subject to a value-added tax, but we export is.
Okay. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a, I'm sorry, but that probably limits our exports. It's probably one of the reasons for a trade deficit is because they exempt their exports from the value-added tax. All countries exempt exports from value-added tax, and they put a value-added tax on the imports. Well, what that means is that if you have if you have a choice, I'm French. I buy something from a French company versus a U.S. company. I am paying the same value-added tax. Okay, so in that way, it's different than a tariff, because a tariff, if France has a tariff on U.S. goods, then if you buy it from the U.S., you pay a tariff, but if you buy it from a French company, you don't.
Yeah.
So that's basically what we're saying. If you buy it from a U.S. company, you don't have a tariff. If you buy it from a French company, you do, or a Mexican company, to use the current, where he's going first. He seems to be going to Canada and Mexico first. A value-added tax, though, I think puts us on more equal footing with other countries from a net export-import perspective. I don't think you would need the tariffs quite as much if you had a value-added tax. I think it would soften that blow, but it is a consumption tax. Now, one of the questions, of course, is with the sales tax always is, how do you make it not regressive? Meaning, how do you not make poor people pay a higher percentage of their income? And you do that with exemptions. I mean, we do it in sales tax already. I don't know why that's even a question. Nobody's saying your state sales tax. Remind me where you live, Caleb?
Tennessee.
So nobody's saying your state sales tax in Tennessee is a horrible thing for poor people. Well, why? Because you exempt food, you exempt medicine, you exempt those things that are basic necessities is what you do. And then you put the tax on, soda, and you put the tax on cars, and you put the tax on luxury items. You do the same thing with the value-added tax.
So, and a value-added tax would be higher. Like, how much would what would your suggestion be, or what do other
How much
countries?
would you need?
What percentage?
So I think the thing to do is first let Doge do its job, and let's get rid of the waste. Okay.
Yeah.
Then let's look at what do we actually need to run the country. Now let's look at the numbers and say, okay, how much of a value-added tax would we need in order to pay for that? And let's make it that much. If it's 10%, it's 10%. If it's 15%, it's 15%. But before you do a value-added tax, you must get rid of the 16th Amendment. Okay? Because
can you imagine? Can you imagine in our lifetime, are we going to see someone run on that?
I guarantee you that if you even if you eliminated the income tax, but the 16th Amendment remained, the next president's going to add a 1% income tax, then a 2%, then a 5%, then a 10%. Yeah. And pretty soon you're France that has a 35% income tax and a 20% or 22% value-added tax. I'm going, the reason the French complain and rioted over their pensions being lowered is it is almost impossible to save for retirement in France. Yeah. Because you're paying all your money in taxes. There you go. So you kind of have to choose.
Yeah, I love it. Is there a difference between land value tax?
LVT? Property tax is completely different. Now, property taxes are highly regressive. In other words, if you're let's say you're fixed income, right? You're a widower, you're living on Social Security. I mean, you can literally, we have a house. So I bought my house 10 years ago or so, paid about $750,000. We have a house down the street that is similar size that is on the market now for $4.5 million.
Wow.
Imagine the difference in property taxes. Right now, what you've done is you increase property taxes by 4 times, 5 times. And if you're on a fixed income, you have to sell your property in order because you can't afford the property taxes. So California did something really smart, right? A number of years ago, they did Prop 13, which I think that is the best law California's ever enacted was Prop 13. Because what it said was, as long as you stay in your house, we're not going to raise your property taxes. Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. I like that. Okay. Because the government should never confiscate somebody's house.
Yeah.
Period.
Yep. That's it. And really, do you own property if you have to pay taxes to actually stay in it? That's an interesting conversation that you could go down the rabbit hole with.
Well,
but then especially if someone can up that, they could really make your life miserable, because you could literally get pushed out of your own home if that was possible.
And that happens to people. Currently that is happening to people as we're seeing this price inflation of real estate. We're seeing people get pushed out of their homes. They cannot afford the property taxes. And I think that is criminal, frankly.
Yep. If the SALT deduction cap is repealed, how will it impact taxpayers in high tax states, and like the federal budgets?
So if the cap is repealed, in other words, it goes back to no cap.
Yep.
First of all, can I go on record as having a SALT deduction is a stupid idea?
Okay, sure. Yeah.
I mean, seriously, my idea would be, why is it 10,000? Make it 0. Get rid of it completely. Here's why. So we have this large standard deduction. So people who are, most people, they're not getting the SALT deduction for property taxes. If it was just for property taxes, I'd be okay with that. Okay. You want to limit it? Maybe. I guess you could, just because of means testing, right? Whatever. Maybe. But I just don't think state income taxes should be deductible. It just makes no sense to me. It used to be, you're too young to know this, but years ago, federal income taxes were deductible on your state tax return.
Yeah.
That's gone. But now states, they go, wait a minute. It's okay for us to get rid of the federal tax deduction on the state return, but it's not okay for the feds to get rid of the. And then here's the other thing that people forget. Very few people actually received the SALT deduction because we had this huge alternative minimum tax.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, if you're going to bring back the SALT deduction, you better bring back the alternative minimum tax.
Okay. You went on record. I love hearing that. Talking back about tariffs, when it comes to tariffs on Canadian oil, is that gonna have any effect on prices, or what are your thoughts on? Do you have a prediction around how tariffs are going to affect our oil in the United States? Because one of the things that Trump is really clear on is drill, baby, drill, and
okay. So I'm an oil investor. That's where I invest. I invest in oil. I like having oil prices up around $80 a barrel. If you drill, baby, drill, you get the oil prices down to $40 a barrel. You no longer have any incentive to drill. So what's right now, I will tell you, the oil developers, they do not want to drill, baby, drill. They do not. So $80, $70 to $80 is a really good price point for oil, because we have to balance between those producing and those consuming. And, there are some people say, well, we're just going to benefit the consumers. Well, that's called the Soviet Union. That's what that's called. Okay.
Yep.
But now there's no incentive to produce.
Yep.
So you have to strike a balance, and we're actually in a pretty good equilibrium right now. So I like the idea that Trump's freeing up Alaska for drilling.
Yep.
But we have an interesting aspect of the US where owning private property is actually in our Constitution. The right to own, the right to property on our own property is in the Constitution. I don't know of other countries that have that. So for example, a lot of countries, take Russia, for example, Russian citizens don't own oil. That's owned by the government, right? And a lot of countries, natural resources are owned by the government. They're not owned by the citizens. In the U.S., citizens own the oil. So I think let the market determine. I'm a big free market guy. Let the market determine how much oil to produce and how much oil to put out there. Putting tariffs on Canadian oil, I don't know. Do you really need to do that, or can the market solve that? I'm thinking the market can solve. I mean, Trump's the one who wanted the Keystone Pipeline, which was an easy way to ship Canadian oil to the U.S. So I'm not quite sure. There seems to be wait a minute. I feel like I've got whiplash, because
I feel like if one person can pull this thing off, it's Trump. That's the thing, is like, but you're right. Sometimes you're like, hey, I feel like we're contradicting ourselves here. Which
exactly. You go after Biden for killing the Keystone Pipeline, and then you put a tariff on the same thing.
Right.
I'm not quite.
But it's all about packaging. I think Biden and his administration did a terrible job talking about their wins. And maybe that's a talking point where like what wins they had. But it was just like the energy. And again, maybe I'm a little biased because I voted for Trump. But like the energy is so different when you're like, he's like signing executive orders and he's talking and he's like asking like, what am I signing? Okay. And then like, this is a good one. And like the energy is different. And I guess if you don't like that, it could turn you off.
Yeah.
But you can't look at him and Biden and one's like feels very strong and like exuberant. And the other feels like we got to usher him away. I do think that translates. And I do think good energy gets things done, and we'll see. Maybe
and Trump is a negotiator. We know that.
Yep.
And I hear 200% tariffs on cars from Mexico. That's not going to happen. I mean, come on, come on. Let's be realistic. So are tariffs. So here's the thing: tariffs, are they good negotiating tools? Yeah, they are. You have to, though, you can't be bluffing.
Yeah.
You got to be willing to do it. Now, I find it interesting that Trump's talking about tariffs on Russia, because I thought we weren't doing any business with Russia. So I'm not quite sure how we get tariffs on Russian goods when we've said we boycotted Russion goods. So I'm confused.
Double whammy right
I'm
there.
a little confused here.
Yeah.
Caleb,
question about. Oh, go on.
No, go ahead.
I have a question about TikTok, and Trump is almost being like, "Hey, TikTok's worthless if we don't let them, like if they can't be in this United States kind of deal." And so he said something about the United States getting like 50% of their proceeds, and like what? Can you help understand that? Because it feels very like that would be like illegal, and like
TikTok's
I'm not for the government trying to get involved in companies.
No, look, TikTok's a national defense issue. The legislation is bipartisan that said TikTok, you have to sell TikTok or you have to shut down. The reason for that is because China's really good at infiltrating us, and they are not our friends. I mean, trading partners will be friendly with them. Trump wants to meet with Xi, but they're not our friends. And so do you really want their ability to spy and collect data on all of us, right? Do you really want that? I loved, there was somebody who proposed, well, why don't Elon Musk buy TikTok? I'd be a huge fan of that. Great. Because I don't think Elon Musk is going to do something contrary to national security concerns, right? And I feel that about, have U.S. interests own, things like that. That's the issue. The issue is not we want to shut down TikTok. Nobody in Congress wants to shut down TikTok. What they want is they don't want China to own TikTok.
Right. No, I understand that. But is it possible for the government to get 50% of the proceeds, or did Trump pretty much mean he wants an American?
How does that help anything if the government gets 50% of the proceeds?
Well, no, because what he's saying is if that's the case, that there can be oversight and make sure that they're not stealing. Like I'm just talking about what. And my question to you is that even possible for the government to own?
I think the better answer, frankly, is a U.S. owner. But
Yeah, okay. Maybe that's what he meant the whole time. I know it's either a US owner or
Yeah,
the
well,
US government
well,
owning 50%.
Congress says it has to be a U.S. owner. That's what Congress said. That's what that law says.
Yeah,
Is
got it.
TikTok? You got to divest. China, the Chinese owners need to divest of TikTok so that China doesn't own TikTok. They're
Yeah.
not saying TikTok's bad. Nobody in Congress said that. They said, well,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's great, but the point is that there is a national security
Yeah.
concern.
Oh, I want to ask you about crypto.
Yeah.
Crypto is one of these things. I remember when Bitcoin was under 20. That's kind of when I started paying attention to it, and then it goes up and down, and now like it seems like President Trump is a very pro in Bitcoin guy potentially, and I could not believe that this is real. By the way, before becoming president, he through Truth Social announces that he has I think he licensed. I don't think it's him, but he licensed his name out to this group, and it went to like a $70 billion market cap. And I think now it's down at the time of this recording around 40. And then Melania, I'm not sure where her market cap is. That seems so insane to me. I can't we're living in crazy times. So that's number one. But then number two is, what is your prediction when it comes to just crypto markets with gold? Like that's a conversation debate I want to set up on. Maybe we get Mark Moss to talk about crypto and Bitcoin, and maybe someone else on gold. And I want to see. So I'm asking a lot of questions, but I guess the thought process, I would love to hear your thoughts around what just happened, where you perceive crypto going, and are you becoming a believer and having some of your assets in crypto?
Well, so first of all, what's one of the biggest businesses in the U.S. right now is sports betting. People love to speculate. They love to bet. Americans love to bet. They love to gamble, and that's all.
Yeah.
I mean, the meme, the meme coins. That's just gambling. It's just legalized. It's just legal gambling. That's all it is. There's no there. It's like, well, when Musk was on Saturday Night Live, and remember, this is the Doge coin, right? So that's where Doge, I think, came from, was the Doge coin. And they asked him straight up, so this is like a scam? And he goes, yeah, it is. I'm going, there's no there. There's no function for it. So Bitcoin and Ethereum, there are a couple of others that they actually have a purpose. And so Ethereum, of course, is programming. It's basically programming. It's blockchain programming. That's what Ethereum is. And there are a couple of others that actually have improved what Ethereum did. Bitcoin, its unique attribute is there's only 24 million. That's it. No more. That's where it's like gold, because gold, historically, the amount of gold tracks with the world population. So there's the same amount of gold per capita now as there was 1,000 years ago. Okay. So that's why gold retains its value, but there's no use of gold, right? Gold doesn't have, it's not like silver. Silver has properties that you can use it. So this is, I think a good comparison is silver is to gold what Ethereum is to Bitcoin.
Silver is a gold to, okay, that's interesting.
Because Ethereum and silver both have industrial uses. Ethereum's use is, this is the programming language for blockchain. Okay.
Yeah.
It's built on Ethereum or a derivative of Ethereum. Okay. Bitcoin is more like gold because it's just a token to retain a value. Bitcoin will not, I don't think Bitcoin will truly be successful until its value is stable. If you look at gold does not fluctuate like Bitcoin does. Okay.
Yeah.
It's gone up because the point of gold is gold retains your purchasing power. So an ounce of gold buys the same amount of goods as it did 2,000 years ago. That's the idea, right? It doesn't increase in value. It just increases in price and it kind of goes along with offsets the currency in price increases. Right. So Bitcoin needs some stability, but I'm not sure that Bitcoin will get that stability until it's over 1 million. So okay. I honestly, I said this years ago, Bitcoin is either going to 0 or 2 million. I'm going to stand by that one.
Well, it's hard for me to imagine that it's going to 0 with all the institutional.
Anymore, I would never say it's going to 0. It's got too much.
So then are you saying are you putting some money in Bitcoin?
Oh, I have money in Bitcoin. I have money in Ethereum.
Okay.
I have money in gold and silver too. I also have money in life insurance. You'll be happy to know.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so I just wanted to hear, and I think over the next 4 years, from a regulatory standpoint, I mean, you have David Sachs, who's going to potentially be the crypto czar, and I think he's going to be very pro innovation. And anything from a tax perspective on crypto that you're keeping an eye on?
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff that needs to happen. So first of all, crypto, it's called cryptocurrency, but it's not currency. So a currency means you can actually use it to buy stuff, and it actually is adopted by a country. And Bitcoin's, I don't think, ever going to be adopted that way. It's going to be more like gold, where it's just I can convert it to dollars, but I'm still going to spend dollars. It's really cumbersome. Bitcoin's, blockchain, I love blockchain because it's basically triple entry accounting, and I'm an accountant nerd. But it's very cumbersome.
Lost everyone there. You just lost everybody.
It's very cumbersome. Okay, so I'm going to bring everybody back here because this is actually a very important point. This is why Bitcoin works. It's actually why blockchain works. So years and years and years ago, hundreds of years ago, a monk invented double entry accounting. In other words, you have two sides, you have a debit and a credit. That's why we have an income statement and a balance sheet, right? You have an income statement and a balance sheet. And they have to, basically your balance sheet balances. Everything on the left equals everything on the right. That's what a balance sheet is, okay? And an income statement, all the income or loss flows into the balance sheet, ends up in the equity section. That's the equity section of the balance sheet, is basically the sum of your income and loss. All right, this is accounting 101. All right, so what that does is it makes it more difficult to lie, basically, when you have to balance, right? This is why, for example, why people who have a Schedule C are 5 times more likely to get audited than people that use a corporation or a partnership. Well, why? Because in S corporation partnership, you have to have double entry accounting. You have debits and credits. Yeah. But on a Schedule C, you don't. You just have single entry accounting. So that means the IRS isn't going to trust you as much. Okay, bring blockchain in. And blockchain is, you have the debits and the credits, and then you have an audit of every single transaction. Every transaction is audited by every other transaction. So basically, every single transaction gets audited. It's not that I'm going to get an audit at the end of the year or once every 10 years by the IRS. I'm going to get audited on every single transaction. And that's what makes blockchain works, but it also what makes blockchain cumbersome, because every transaction has to be audited by everybody else, right? And so, but what it means is that it's a much safer system. You think about a 3-legged stool versus a 2-legged stool. Which would you rather sit on? Yep. Right? You don't want to sit on a 2-legged stool, and blockchain is a 3-legged stool. So it's literally, instead of double entry accounting, it's triple entry accounting.
I got it.
Okay. So there you go.
Yeah, that's good. That's
and
really
actually, I have actually explained it that way to people that would be considered crypto experts. And they think about it for a second, they go, yeah, that's right. And I'm going, that's the simple way to think about it. It is just triple entry accounting. That's what it is. That's
but you articulated, I've never heard someone articulate that way. And it makes you, I can see the path of like where this utility can come in handy in a lot of different ways.
Give you an example. Okay. So I think the place that blockchain should go first is real estate titles. Okay. And the reason is because I think title insurance is a scam. All right. And But if you actually were sure, now the problem with blockchain is you have to make sure that the original transaction is accurate. So you've got to start with, yes, Caleb really owns that house in Tennessee. You really do own that house. Once that's established, then what that means is that anytime you go to sell the house, it's really just a matter of using a coin or a smart contract, and you should never have title insurance again. Okay, it's established, and I think that's where it's like, okay, so it means that you should be able to be assured that your financial transactions are all good. There's no scams out there because it's on a blockchain, right? That's why I think blockchain as a technology is amazing, but I will also tell you that the downside to blockchain is it's the opposite of Trump. It's the opposite of a mob boss. Blockchain is all of the people doing it.
Yeah.
Right? It's not a single person, right?
Yeah, which is attractive.
A Citibank Visa all of the rules are created by Citibank, right? Or American Express. They're created by American Express. Whereas in blockchain, it's all distributed and it's created by all the people that own it, which is millions and millions of people, right? So it's an amazing technology that nobody's discovered yet how to make it simple.
Yeah. All right, I'm gonna land the plane here. I got just recession concerns. Lawrence Summers warned that Trump's policies could push us towards a recession. Do you see signs of this happening in the next 4 years?
Oh yeah, Musk said it. Musk said it, 6-8 months ago. He said, if we do what we set out to do, we're going to have financial difficulties in the short run. Let me paint the scenario for you, Caleb, real quick. First of all, what's the very first thing he's doing? He's deporting millions of people.
Yep.
Okay, so now you have fewer workers in the marketplace and fewer consumers in the marketplace. Okay, so that is a deflationary activity. Okay, deflation is, by the way, recession, deflation, same word, right?
Yep.
Okay, so that's deflationary, meaning it's going to push, it's going to take air out of the market. Second of all, next thing that's happening, you're going to eliminate hundreds of thousands of government workers. What are they going to do? Where are they going to get the money to spend? So you have all that gone. If you deport all those people, all right, you no longer have a housing shortage because those people, yes, they were doubling and tripling up in a lot of cases, right? Particularly from Mexico and South America, but you deport all those people, millions and millions of people, which is what Trump's talking about. Okay, you know how long? Now you have a housing surplus, not a housing shortage, which means that rents come down. If rents come down, that means that real estate investors have less money, right? Banks have less money, and it's deflationary. Tariffs are actually do the same thing because now it's more expensive to buy those goods, and so I'm going to buy fewer goods. That's another reason, by the way, that the tariffs won't necessarily increase inflation because it puts downward pressure on the economy. Right. So there's a lot of downward pressures on the economy as a result of what Trump's trying to do. But if you won't recall this because you weren't born yet, but I was in college and when Ronald Reagan took office, and Reagan took office and he ran on the idea that life is going to be hard until it gets easy. And he made hard decisions. And so do I think that we could have a rough time in the economy for the next 2 years? I do. But then I think it will flip, right? It'll become a hockey stick. But you've got to do the hard stuff before you get the good stuff.
Yeah. Tom, it is so fun talking to you. The triple accounting, I'm still like processing that in my brain. I love
triple
that.
entry, there you go.
You have a ton of wisdom, and again, you're always open to having conversations, debates. A lot of people, by the way, we've reached out to a ton of people around different discussions. A lot of people do not want to be in a dialogue with someone that they disagree with or might have different views. I have a tremendous respect for people that know their stuff. They don't need to study to come on, memorize a few points. Like, when you know. And so thank you. This was very fun for me, and I know that we're going to do more content here in the future. Is there any final words that you want to have? Obviously, we'll put all your links, your YouTube channel, your books down below.
Awesome.
Anything else that you want to say?
Yeah, debate is how we learn. And
right.
if we're not, Robert Kiyosaki, my good friend, he says, look, there are three sides to a coin. There's heads, tails, and the edge. And wisdom comes from the edge and being able to see both sides. And so I've never been afraid of a debate because I don't care. I just don't, if somebody has a good point, that means I learn, right? I don't need to be right. I need to learn is what I need to do. And so I think that debate is actually a very important part of society, and it's how we learn. It's how we get better. It's how we grow. And I really appreciate these opportunities with you, Caleb, because I don't feel like I have to say things a certain way. And I'm going to say, look, this is how I see it. You don't have to agree with me. It's still how I see it. Now, if you want to share another viewpoint, I am always open to another viewpoint, which is why I'm happy to do these with you, Caleb, because just because somebody doesn't agree with me doesn't mean they're wrong.
Well, and for your clients, and you've said this to me as well, it's like, hey, if you come across any text thing, shoot it my way, because I love to learn, even if it's a scam. And so I also appreciate your just like openness and willingness to be like, wait, there's nothing new under the sun, but if there is, I'll take a look at it.
Absolutely, 100%. Thank you,
Tom,
Caleb.
Thank you.